Hello, my spooky crew, and welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if this is your first time here. My name is Alex, and thanks for coming to my spooky corner of the internet. For this video this time around, I wanted to share a personal story that has been on my mind for about 2 years now, and it involves my family, my grandfather. If you know me personally, you know that I absolutely adore my grandfather. He was my hero. He was my father figure when I was young, made a huge impact on my life. But there wasn't a lot of information that I knew about him, and there wasn't a lot of information that even like my mom knew about him. Keep in mind that my grandfather was a Japanese American man. During World War II, he served in the U.S. Army, and he had a brother that served in the 442nd, and he had another brother who was sent to a prison camp because he was snorkeling in the San Francisco Bay, and he got accused of surveying the coastline for Imperial Japan. And even after World War II, my grandfather dealt with his share of racism. I never knew this, but it wasn't until a reporter and an author reached out to me and my uncle asking for information about my grandfather because I didn't know this. Apparently, my grandfather became like the face of the civil rights movement in Minneapolis, Minnesota, or at least the movement for racial equality, because he was denied the opportunity to buy a house because he was Japanese. And this was in, 1940s Minnesota. Once the university students caught wind of it, they joined a huge protest with my grandfather. Also, while my grandfather was serving in the U.S. Army during World War II, he was actually stationed at Fort Snelling, which was used for mainly like special intelligence, training soldiers in Japanese and teaching them how to speak it so that they could question Japanese prisoners of war. And because that work was extremely strenuous, this base also had a lot of extracurricular activities and hobbies that the soldiers could participate in so that they can like rest their brains and get their mind off of things. So my grandfather apparently was an assistant basketball coach, and he coached Wat Misaka, who was the first person of color to play in the NBA. So it's like crazy things we didn't know about. And then later I found out that my grandfather and his unit during Korea caught the first intact Soviet plane, which again blows my mind. The plane was on display at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base for the longest time, and now it's not, and I've been trying to track this plane down. But anyway, there was a lot of things that my grandfather didn't tell me, well, of course, because I was little, but didn't seem to tell his immediate family either. And it's not until, thanks to Google and all of this information becoming available that this is coming out. And one of those is an apparent UFO or UAP sighting. But before we dive into that, be sure to click on that subscribe button, give this video a like, and be sure to click on that notification bell so you'll be the first to know when I upload a new video. And if you want more paranormal content, ghost hunting tips, and all that good stuff, you can head on over to my website at thespookystuff.com. If you would like to upgrade your Spooky Crew membership, you can also join my Patreon. Starting at just $3 a month, you can get behind the scenes looks, you can get a blooper reel. Trust me, there's going to be a lot of bloopers with this video, and you'll have a chance to hear some news before I release them to the public. I just released a couple of different bits of juicy, exciting pieces of news that is in the works right now that my Patreon subscribers now know about. So if you're interested in joining, it starts at just $3 per month, and also you'll get a chance to see my pieces of writing before they're officially published. And if you join the $9 tier or higher, you will get a book every December as a holiday gift. So if you're interested in joining my Patreon, go to patreon.com/thespookystuff, and you can go over there and get started. And finally, because, I'm trying to get myself out there more, I do have an Etsy shop as well. So if you're interested in spooky themed t-shirts, mugs, buttons, signed books, you can head on over to thespookystuff.etsy.com and you can check out some of the merch I have available. All right, I think I'm done. Now let's get started. So about 2 years ago, a program manager from Fort Snelling reached out to me. She told me that she had been doing research about the thousands of men and women who had attended and graduated from Fort Snelling, and my grandfather came across her radar, and she reached out to me asking me if I would like some more information about him. And as many of you know, I am trying to piece together as much of my grandfather's life as I can. Sometimes it hasn't been easy, especially since he was so tight-lipped about certain things in his life that sometimes finding information has been hard, especially his military history. So I emailed her back and I told her, yes, I would love any information that you have. And she shared with me like a year-by-year timeline of my grandfather. Now, I know around 1957, he was stationed at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base because my mother was born at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in 1957. And I know he had met my grandmother at least like around that year or before then, because my grandmother was working in the cafeteria at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And apparently this is what I've been told my grandparents met because, you know, my grandfather was schmoozing with the cafeteria lady, who was my grandmother. I'm not sure if it's accurate, but it's what I got. I also heard that they met on a blind date. But anyway, I know in 1955, you know, he was a captain in the United States Air Force. He was in the U.S. Army, and then when the Air Force broke off, he did join the Air Force. Also, my grandfather attended the University of Minnesota studying aeronautical engineering. He was at the University of Washington before until Pearl Harbor. I'm not exactly sure what he was studying there. I'm still trying to dive into that a little bit. I know he was a boxer and a swimmer when he was in college, but I don't have a 100% declaration on what he was studying. But anyway, he was studying aeronautical engineering at the University of Minnesota. So, this was a very smart man. He was also a strong critical thinker, and he didn't just jump to conclusions. But anyway, as I was reading this report from the program manager, I was really shocked to see that in 1955, apparently my grandfather saw something in the sky. Call it a flying saucer, call it a UFO, call it a UAP. He definitely saw something. And the only reason why we know about this story is because the story was featured in a book by Lauren E. Gross, and that book is called The Fifth Horseman of the Apocalypse, UFOs, A History, 1955, September 15th through December 31st. And this book was published in 1993, so this was about a little over a year after my grandfather passed away. And according to the program manager and from what I looked at, the book does appear to be a collection of UFO sightings. And I will admit the report is really hard to read, but luckily the program manager did make out some parts of it, so I'm going to read it to you right now. And this is my grandfather writing the report. I received a telephone call approximately 10:15 p.m. Thursday, September 22nd from Mr. Joe, last name is redacted, that there was a flying saucer in the sky in the southeast direction from their house, asking me to report it to the OOC at Canton Filter Center. I made the call, giving my station, Hotel Metro 50 block, telling them of the object, as I could see it with the naked eye, saw it high in the atmosphere, southeast sky. It went to southwest, and in there he has a drawing of two circles with an arc connecting them. It went to southwest at point indicated with X. There was something expelled from the object. There was an explosion sound like firecrackers. The sound was faint. The object moved slowly. It just seemed to disappear all at once. There were two explosions or rocket flashes. Signed by John T. Matsuo, Captain, United States Air Force. And the second page of the report is a drawing of the two saucers with notes, which I'll show right as much as I can. I'll show right here. The first like this, and the second point, explosion heard, two rocket or something came out, smoky blue color, reddish orange exhaust. So from what I get with this report is my grandfather was working, he received the call, and my grandfather apparently could see it as well. And this was an object that was moving slowly. And it seemed to be one thing, but it's like two circles with an arc that connected them. So it's like two circles, and something came out of the object. So there was an explosion like firecrackers. Again, keep in mind, my grandfather was studying aeronautical engineering. He had graduated at this point. This was a very smart man who was serving in the Air Force. So if there was anything like military experimentation happening, he probably would have known about it, or at least had a heads up about it. So the fact that he was unaware of what he was looking at is telling. And also what I like here is that he doesn't immediately jump to like aliens, UFO, UAP. He does mention flying saucer, but that's because Mr. Joe, whoever he was, said it was a flying saucer. So even my grandfather doesn't say, I saw a flying saucer. What he did here was he described with a lot of detail exactly what he saw. Again, I'm not exactly sure where he was when this incident happened. I know he was at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in the mid 50s, so it could be that he was already at Wright-Patterson, which as most people know, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base was kind of like the hub for like aliens and UFOs. And the fact that my mom was born in the midst of all that, it's interesting. And I know I need to get a copy of my grandfather's military records because I think this will help answer a lot of these questions. So this was labeled unclassified. I also know that these these records did become available in the 70s and 80s. So it could be that maybe this was classified and then it became unclassified. I'm not 100% sure. So if there's anyone out there that could help fill in that blank, that would be great. I have an interest in UFOs and UAPs, but I always saw myself as not being smart enough to be a part of that community. So I've just, watched it from a distance because I've made UAP content before, just basically talking about the UAP report from the Pentagon. But I'm not like deep into that world, but maybe this is motivation for me to get more involved. Another thing I want to point out is it's kind of cool that my grandfather had this experience, meaning that I'm not the only one in my family who has seen something weird. Besides my mother. But it's just kind of cool to see that these experiences are kind of multi-generational. So my mom has had some weird things happen to her, but my grandfather had something happen. And in the rest of the timeline that was sent by the program director or the program manager, I didn't see any more UFO sightings or UAPs, so it seems like this may have been the one. Now, something that my mom did tell me, she did say that my grandfather carried a camera with him all the time in case he ever saw an alien. Now, I don't know if this was the incident that inspired that, or was it the fact that, he was stationed at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, or maybe he wasn't a pilot, but he did test parachutes, and there are multiple patents under his name for the military. I mean, he patented the daisy chain, which is a very significant piece of equipment or gear for hardware for, parachutes. Could it be that while he was up in the sky getting ready to jump out of a plane, did he see something? I'm not sure. And sadly, if he did see something, he either didn't tell anybody, or if there is a report on it, maybe it's classified. I'm not sure. But if anyone is interested in giving me some insight on maybe diving deeper into getting those records, his military records especially, I think I just need to fill out a form online. So that's pretty easy. I just need to do it. But in terms of what information is classified and unclassified and when, if anyone has any insight on that, I will be very interested. But anyway, that's all I got for today. I figured I would share this personal story of my grandfather and how he saw a UFO, UAP, flying saucer, whatever we want to call it. I thought it was pretty cool. I have to say, when I read that, I about fell out of my seat. I'm like, I'm not the only one. And especially since it was my grandfather who saw it. Again, aeronautical engineer, invented so much stuff for the military, extremely smart man, uses critical thinking skills. He just calls it as he sees it. He doesn't jump to conclusions. And even in this report, he didn't jump to a conclusion. So this was very my grandfather. So, I thought this was pretty neat. And I thought you all would enjoy the story as well. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to click on that subscribe button, give this video a like, and click on that notification bell so you'll know when I upload another video. Thank you all so much for watching. I look forward to seeing your comments, and I will see you in the next round.